Good afternoon and welcome to another of our India at Cannes 2020 presentations. Let me start with an apology. We're running a little bit late, but the slight phrase herding cats comes together. But it's been worth it because we like to start these things by talking about what a distinguished panel we have. And in truth, many of you have seen these before. That's not always the case. However, today I'm very proud and happy to present a genuinely distinguished panel to address something that concerns us all in the film and television industry, co-productions. We've talked about that before on various other FICCI platforms, and one of the encouraging things about these discussions is that the conversations have moved forward. Those of you who have attended FICCI Frames over the last few years will have seen changes come from our friends in the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, and I'm delighted to have both joint secretaries on this conversation today, Ms. Kalyani for films and Ms. Neerja Sekhar for broadcasting. I started by saying good afternoon, and of course, actually I'm wrong because we should be in Cannes today. It should be 11:30, it should be 11:37 now. So I'll say good morning. We hope to finish this up quickly and then nip for a little lunch, perhaps on the Croisette and a little glass of wine. So that's a spur to us to be focused and pay attention. We are a truly international panel, as befits an international co-production discussion. I'm talking to you from London. Paul, Brett, and Marc Lorber, my colleague here in London. We have my new friend, Sergio Scapagnini, in Rome. We have Rohena Gera in Paris, and plenty of other colleagues dotted around India. So we really are ready to talk about the broader issues of co-production. And before I open it up to our distinguished panel, let us just, for the record, establish that in terms of co-production, when we talk about co-production, there are really two types of co-production, both of which I hope we'll talk about today. One is just like a joint venture, two different companies from two different countries working together to make things happen. And then the other is treaty co-productions. India now has treaty co-productions with 15 different countries. One of them is my own, the UK. I was present at the signing of that treaty in 2008, I think. I don't believe that's actually been used yet. And perhaps by the end of this hour, we'll have established why us Brits are so bad at that. However, we do have examples on today's panel of those who've managed to access particularly the French co-production treaty. So I want to delve into that a little bit. Our distinguished members of the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting have elected to be more in a listening role today. It's encouraging that they've talked a lot this week about various new proposals, including incentives, and they're here to listen to us and to learn, so they assure me, but perhaps we can check in with them at the end to see if we have radically affected future Indian governmental policy. I do hope so, but let us start perhaps with those of you who have actively been involved in productions. Perhaps let's go to Paris first. Rohena, tell us a little bit about your production. That was under the Indo-French co-production treaty, a film called Sir. A little bit on your experiences and the values of co-production. And to use a phrase I think we all heard often, yeah, good, you're unmuted now, thank you.
I'm back, yeah. Well, for me, the co-production, it was actually a very good experience. I was very keen to do it for various reasons. And the primary reason was actually not the funding, which is often, often for a lot of people, you assume that European funding is very valuable and you can do a lot with it. It actually ended up costing us a little bit more to work with France because it's more expensive to do the post-production in France. But there were choices which were more aesthetic. I mean, I'm here as a co-producer, but I'm the director of the film. So my decision making was entirely about the aesthetics of the film and what I wanted to accomplish. That said, I think there were challenges, of course, which were with the understanding on both sides. You know, with our French co-producer and the Indian production team, which is me and my producer, to make it work, because it's not. I think the communication isn't that streamlined. Both sides don't necessarily always know what is required. We were doing it for the first time. It's the first film, and it was our first co-production. So I think in terms of simple steps to just make it more streamlined. and more and clearer, really, in some way, because when you're navigating all these different levels of permissions and things that you have to get done and paperwork, we had a big problem with paperwork, which I actually went to Delhi and I had to get it resolved, and the ministry was helpful in resolving that. But it was because we didn't have all the information up front as to all the steps, so I think that's a little, it's just these things can be quite opaque and complicated for a lot of people. But the experience was good. I don't know if there's anything specifically you would like me to talk about.
Let's finish on a high note, saying the experience was good. Aditi Anand, you're a co-producer of The Extraordinary Journey of the Fakir, which I think is also a French co-production. Was that technically a treaty co-production? Would you share Rohena's experience?
I mean, it was very much an official co-production between India and France, and then between France and Belgium. And then there were a significant number of other countries that were involved, not in an official capacity, but we had partners from the United States and we had partners from Singapore. And we had a bunch of pre-sales that had happened at a very early stage in the production of the film. So it was the most difficult challenge with contracts and differences in time zones, trying to get people from the US and Singapore to get together to negotiate a contract. You can imagine that it took us months to do that. I think I'd rather not look at it in terms of, challenges versus not challenges, because I think that this particular film would never have happened unless it was an official co-production. Or rather, unless it was a co-production and it was a collaboration between very many different countries. In the film, the character travels from India to France to England, Spain, and lands up in Libya and then back in India. So, in order for us to kind of like traverse that geography, it was an obvious choice for us to do that in partnerships. I think that the film chooses the co-production. I'm not sure that the co-production chooses the film. I don't think that every film is, I don't think every film is right for a co-production. I don't think you can cross-fit a film into co-production. I think there have to be certain creative choices and there have to be certain imperatives within the script and within the vision of the director that allows for that co-production to happen. I also agree that, where the funding is a huge plus, I don't think that should ever or can actually be the only reason for a co-production to happen. In my personal experience, it was certainly a very new experience for me. Not only was it the first co-production I had done, it was also the first independent film that I had produced. And I was involved with this film right through. So we started actually at the NFDC Film Bazaar because the French producer was there at the co-production market with another film. And, he pulled out from under the table this yellow brochure and said, well, I have this other film and it's titled The Extraordinary Journey of the Fakir who got trapped in an IKEA wardrobe. And I said, yeah, that's the film that we should do. It took us 4 long years, but it was an extremely rewarding experience, extremely in every respect. And I would strongly encourage that, as the kind of world becomes a more globalized marketplace, and we have, I think that co-productions open up the opportunity to make more universal stories.
Well, I mean, Gaurav, your film title, Beyond the Known World, plays to exactly that point. But of course, you have a lot of experience also in television production. But I think your film accessed the New Zealand co-production treaty. Is that right?
Yeah, it was a fresh treaty then, just signed in 2013. And we'd been working on the film since 2010. And then it took a long while to get it done. And when it got it done, then it took a long while for it to come all sort of together. The New Zealand guys were pretty fast, and they were like, they put it like the money, the cast crew from their end happened much faster than what our partners here could turn around. But generally, it was a very healthy and I would say we should work more in co-productions. Purely, all our films have been Faith Connection, which Marc Lorber had bought, or Angry Indian Goddesses. Faith Connection was French, Angry Indian Goddesses was German, and this one is New Zealand. So we believe that we can get the best talent and do it at a certain cost, and then kind of benefit from the cost arbitrage and getting the best talents from everywhere. So our Beyond the Known World had a crew from 11 countries in different capacities, and best of everywhere. I think the paperwork and in terms of what can be done is, I think the paperwork and the systems, that the approval systems and how the guidelines of how a certain film should be brought to our funders in India, and have a robust funding policy for culture, not necessarily only films, culture in sense, documentaries, films, television, whatever represents culture. I think that should be looked at more than anything else. And of course, the paperwork and the time taken to get everything done should be looked at, I feel.
All right, we'll talk about that in a little bit more. And on a side note, may I say, commend Marc Lorber for picking up Angry Indian Goddesses, which was one of my favorites.
Faith Connection. He picked up Faith Connection, the one before that.
In which case, look at Angry Indian Goddesses. Marc, I'll come to you in a moment because I want to hear from you and Paul on the sort of bigger picture outside looking in. But let us just continue our trip around Europe with Sergio, who wrote and produced the story of Lala, which is set in India. Sergio, was that also a treaty co-production, or was that just a physical film made in India? I say just.
No, is a co-production. And very much in the picture of the agreement, which was signed with Italy, between India and Italy, some years ago. And the idea that it will be a formal co-production within the agreement has been a strong point in favor of the film. I mean, the film has several strong points. One is the director, who is Indian, Gautam Ghosh. But being Gautam, the only Indian director, was also been, say, awarded in Italy with the Vittorio De Sica Life Achievement Award, winning in Venice, 2 prestigious awards with Par, and in Cannes with Padmanadir Mashi. I mean, he's very well known in Europe and in Italy. So for me, as producer from Italy, I had not to look for an Italian director to be happy about the project. Because with Gautam, I am in wonderful hands, and this has sounded very strongly also in favor in Europe. And this is a great advantage. Then we have the other advantage that the film has a very strong environmental commitment, and especially in these years, it is sounding as something which many people like to support because of this aim. I mean, the call for nature, for protecting the common house, as it is called by the Dalai Lama and by the Pope, is something very relevant. And this is giving a strong push to the film. By the way, we have got from the Italian Ministry of Cultural Goods the qualification of film of cultural value, which means that they are now our partners, also financially. The film has been pre-acquired by Rai Television. So it is already sure of appearing in a very prestigious, frame as soon as it will be completed. And for the moment, we have completed the Italian shooting with a very beautiful, result. And it was the first time that an Indian director was directing an Italian crew. Practically, Gautam renounced to bring his people from India. And he had put total trust in the Italian crew. And the experience finished with Gautam asking to meet our director cinema of the ministry to congratulate. So, the experience of an Indian director shooting in Italy with a total Italian crew has been already a great success at the stage. So we are very happy of this stage. Now, we were planned to shoot in India in June. But of course, we cannot. So we are waiting that when the circumstances and the good God will allow us to come, and we are almost ready. We have a beautiful producer from Kolkata, a beautiful producer from Bombay, and I have a wonderful Italian co-producer who is Mr. Amedeo Pagani, very well known in the world for having produced film who have got the Golden Palm in Cannes and the Golden Lion in Venice. And he loved this project, and he is my strongest, friend and support. So I feel very, very happy, of the proceeding of the story of Lala, whom probably you know is taken by a book written by me on an Indian boy whom I met on the beach of Juhu many years ago. So I feel specially committed. I hope that after the lockdown, the things will start happily again. And the beautiful thing is also NFDC is in the picture. And we are in the process to be in co-production also with NFDC when, after the lockdown, the result of our very warm application will be well known. So I should say the whole experience is positive. A part of lockdown, but lockdown is such a big subject and a tragedy for the whole world that I don't have the courage to claim. I only am happy that things are in Italy especially passing. I wish that they will pass for the whole planet and for India in particular. And
well,
with this,
I had hoped this would be the 1 hour in which we didn't talk about COVID-19, but anyway, there you go. It's inevitable. Thank you very much. Marc, two questions for you. One, and a purely practical thing. What we've heard about. I'm glad everything's beautiful for Sergio, but we've heard other concerns.
He's got the light of God above his head, so he's blessed. It's going to happen, Sergio.
It looks like Michelangelo is doing his lighting. Two questions. One is obviously co-productions are a fiddle. They're a faff. Their paperwork is difficult. We have two different meshing systems.
You've obviously heard me use a vulgarity before about co-productions, but I won't use it here.
I'm glad. We're keeping it clean. Ladies present, please. So what are the commercial advantages of it? And then secondly, to expand the conversation a little bit, you have so much experience in international television. Is there a value moving forward, and particularly with India in mind, in co-production in television also?
Yeah, and let me just clarify for everybody. I am Lionsgate. We are a film and TV studio, but I'm purely on the TV side, so I won't deem to speak for my film colleagues. And we have a significant office, yes, there in India, run by Rohit Jain. So I encourage anybody who's got a local project to reach out to him, perhaps firstly, and his team. So speaking about the two questions, and maybe I'll take the first and then you'll remind me of the second. I think there's just two parts of it. All of us, when we've got a production, are playing the finance roulette. Where can we get a cast, crew, and infrastructure? Regardless of where the show may be originally commissioned from, where can we shoot it and get the most bang for our buck? Not just production value, but return on finance. And where is that going to be simple? And I think, all too often we look around at tax credits, rebates, co-production treaties that will provide funds. And one of the questions is, how quickly and easily do those funds come back to you or advance to you? Because that will apply to whether a distributor like us will lend against that in a way, or a bank or an equity entity. And that roulette is played constantly on so many projects. And there are so many territories and even cities and states and regions within countries that are competing for that. So we always look for that. And I think, Aditi had a lot of key things to say, that the paperwork can be difficult. And so the lawyers and line producers skilled in putting those deals together between those two countries, and ideally two, maybe three, not 4 or 5, because it gets ever so more complicated, they're key. These co-productions in general, to me, are one in the run-up to prep and prep. Because once we get into that, if we're still figuring things out, we're sunk. So it is, what percentage of the spends between each of the countries do we have to apportion? And where are we going to balance the crew, the cast, the infrastructure, the prep, production, and post, so that we adequately cover those spends and that we've got the right people involved. So, if we're going to have an Indian DP and a British costume designer and production designer, how are we balancing all the elements? And then in a true co-production, I think we always look towards, rather than the deal, the creative, and it being organic first. What's the show that interests us, regardless of what the setting is? And we're fairly genre agnostic. So when I'm brought a show, if it's set in India, if it has an Indian component, if it's compelling, it's compelling. And then the next part becomes the business side of it. And so we are looking at those treaties and how they've been used. And unfortunately, it hasn't been used much between the UK and India. It should have been on Beecham House and other things. And I don't know that it was. But there is rhyme and reason for it going forward. So I'm just looking at the complexity. How hard is it going to be to put that together? How quickly can we administer it and get those funds coming back to us? And what elements do I need to balance between all of the countries? I think that answered the first part of the question. I don't know if I answered.
Rather skillfully, I think also my second question was about to expand to the issues of TV co-production and the values there. But actually, I think, if I'm right, that your answer speaks to both.
Yeah, all I could say is, as the streamers, less likely the local and linear channels in India, but the streamers who are there, both Indian streamers and international streamers, have the funds and the desire to reach out and do things that are more universal, the more likely we are to have TV co-productions that can work.
All right. And before I move to Paul, let me just apologize to Rohit Jain from Lionsgate. If your inbox is full tomorrow, if you're watching, with Mark saying, please do get in touch.
Blame me.
Yeah, blame Mark. Paul, a friend of India, very experienced in international film finance. Where do you sit on co-productions? Do you value them?
I'm not a practicing co-producer. I am an aspiring co-producer. India is my second favorite country in the world, and I've been lucky enough to visit it many times since 1978. And
the Indian panel, only your second favorite?
After England. I'm lucky enough to live where I love most. And during lockdown, that is fortunate to be where you love most. But no, India is my second favorite country in the world, and I have visited every state in India, I think, aside from Assam. And one of the many facts I find fascinating is that by the end of next year, it's estimated there'll be 150 streaming services in India alone. And by last count, there are 26 official languages in India, which will account for a large number. But I'm trying to look at the bigger picture, as I know you frequently do, Colin. And I'm a big supporter of the initiatives that you are taking to get major productions underway between the UK and India. And we are natural partners. We are probably still extremely good allies, and there is an awful lot that we can share. And I think that I, for one, am looking with great interest to see how the incentives to film in India play out, because there is little doubt that India has the most varied landscape there is on the planet, given its size, and that there is a certain, I hope I don't offend anyone by saying that I feel there's a certain intimidation about filming in India, that India is famous for its bureaucracy in terms of the dreaded co-production paperwork, and therefore it can be a little off-putting, but that is overcome by the quality and talent available there, and as I've mentioned, the landscapes. And as you know, Colin, I have a tremendous interest in the technical abilities of India, because clearly India is one of the most advanced nations on earth in terms of technology. And I think that there are tremendous opportunities to work together to build more shooting facilities and to build on what is already a very extensive video effects and post-production industry. So we are taking an active interest in looking at sound stages, not only in Mumbai, but in nearly every state in India.
So thank you, Paul. So if we accept, as of course we should do for the purposes of this panel, that co-productions are therefore a good thing, let's look at how we might improve them, and particularly Sergio is still in the middle of his production, but Rohena, Aditi, and Gaurav, who have completed co-productions. Where are you at in terms of your next project? Are there things that, as Aditi says, not every film is right for a co-production, but is this something you're looking forward to plunging into again? And what would you like to see change as we move forward? Perhaps, I mean, let's start in the same order again. Rohena, perhaps if tell us what you're up to and your thoughts on moving forward. And once again, there we go.
I think what would be really helpful, at least this was my experience, and it's just coming from one film. But I think I also speak somewhere for the audiences in India. That some of we talk about getting a film made and the values of co-production, to the aesthetics or to the choices or to the vision of the film and to the funding. But also for me, it's been a challenge getting my film to the audience in India. And I think a lot of films that get made via co-productions, if they don't follow the sort of, if they're not seen as commercially viable in Indian terms, which is basically who is the star? Is there a star in your film? It becomes very challenging. So there are a lot of really wonderful films and filmmakers that one doesn't get to see that easily. And I think that's a challenge that I wish could be addressed. As you know, because when you do a co-production with France, you get a lot of support from the French side towards the release of your film. There's from the French government, there are incentives for distributors to buy your film, or for television channels, or whatever. So I think those kinds of things could be really helpful to going forward for me as a choice as to whether you do a co-production again. For me, for aesthetic reasons and for the film itself, like Aditi said, if it makes sense for the film, I would love to do it again because it's a great experience. The collaborations are wonderful. But in practical terms, when you make a film that goes around the world and has a really good life in other countries, and all of that doesn't matter when you bring it home, because you need a little support to make it viable, I feel.
Well, there's a whole separate panel to do on the issues of independent film distribution in India, and no doubt my colleagues at Fakir are scribbling notes as we talk. But Aditi, what are your thoughts? Does that chime with your experience and your hopes moving forward?
So let me answer in two parts. One, of course, I think is independent Indian filmmakers. Not only are we merging two different infrastructural kind of filming cultures between Europe and India, but you're also trying to create a puzzle that fits in terms of the audiences as well. And I think that sometimes one ends up trying to tick too many of the boxes, and then perhaps without the adequate infrastructure in India to be able to the cost of selling films in India is sometimes higher than the cost of making the films, and that seems to be a bridge that we have to learn to close. But I'm going to try and articulate something that's been on my mind, but I haven't ever said it out loud, and it's something just picking up from what Marc said, which is that for someone who's been primarily in film, TV hasn't been something that I've been involved with at all. But what's happened with the kind of the onslaught of the OTTs and this new culture that has come is that I think that the whole relationship between Indian filmmakers and international players will change, because India provides something which a lot of other countries in the world can't provide, which is numbers. And so suddenly Indian stories become just important just for that number, just for that huge quantum. And I think that becomes a completely different bargaining chip, because everything is a negotiation. Every story, you put a film together, that's a negotiation. And I think the fact that Indian filmmakers are now kind of waking up to the idea that they can tell stories that are deeply rooted in Indian culture, in Indian context and idiom, I think that it's going to flip really the lens on co-productions. And I think that we're going to see a new breed of co-productions happen. And I think that the more that we try, I think the thing with series and the OTT space is that I feel that it's providing more opportunity today, because that last mile distribution, which almost no independent Indian filmmaker has cracked to date, almost none. Some have, but not, I mean, certainly not as a marketplace. So I would say that, you know, in the over the course of the next 4 or 5 years, we'll see a very different kind of co-production happen. And I'm really excited about moving into that space.
And Gaurav, presumably that's something that interests you. As Rohena was talking about the sort of lack of support for releasing your co-produced product, I was thinking of a film you co-produced, Peddlers, which I saw and admired in Cannes 6, 7, 8 years ago, and probably too early to be picked up by Netflix, but maybe nowadays would be more natural home for you. Where are you looking for your ultimate sort of platform? Is it online? Is it OTT?
It's stuck with the studio Eros, and they've made it complicated. I don't know for what reason. But I think the time has really changed. When we were I mean, I started in 2001 to now. I think there is more ability to be, as our Prime Minister says, self-dependent. You know, because over the years it's been you've used time to sort of knock on doors, and now you don't really need to do it that much, because those doors are more open now, and they kind of call you. So I do documentary, feature, reality television, and drama series. So I'm feeling that, as Aditi just nailed it, how she put it, like this whole environment is changing very drastically, and it's only going to be benefiting filmmakers who don't now necessarily need to rely on theatrical releases, and there are other ways to bring your film to the audience, and you can also now reverse engineer films in, because say Netflix has X number of people and their audience, their monthly fee is 700 rupees, 600, something in that range, and for Amazon it's 129. So exactly that what could go here and what could go here. So you can backtrack your story and say, okay, this is for this is for this, and whether it's a documentary, feature, drama series, it really doesn't matter. So I feel excited about. I feel the government will feel a little left behind if they don't catch up, because these boys with big pockets are moving super fast. I mean, during the pandemic, we are shooting 2 series, right now, one for Amazon. Yeah. So there's lots happening. I feel that the government has to come in, and if it wants, I feel that if they want any representation of culture for India, the new India, as we all claim it, I think they need to step in and wake up to this new reality that things are moving fast. Like, I'm not relying. We have 3 films. It's a trilogy. And we are doing it all ourselves, the financing, everything. So it's moving very fast. In the last 1.5 years, we'll be ready to shoot as soon as this thing opens up. So I feel if they really want to be, the government especially, they should, understand how the other world is working, how the other governments, for example, France, New Zealand, Germany, the 3 that I've worked with, they are very fast. They are really in it. They are experts who are sitting there, who understand film producing and the challenges that come with it, and they support you. I mean, I've been getting calls from New Zealand. I was getting calls from New Zealand saying, "Hey, are you guys okay?" From the New Zealand Film Commission. Do you need any help? Etc. etc. So I think we have so much potential in India. I mean, I feel it's a special country, because what we can do here at the cost and at the numbers of audience is nowhere else in the world. China doesn't allow that. So which other, this is where the opportunity is, I feel.
So can I add one quick thing? Just to I think the other thing that India has, and not only should the Indian government be more cognizant, but also perhaps film commissions in Europe and other parts of the world, India also has private money in a way that almost no other country except the United States has for entertainment, movies, series, etc. And in India, we're able to bring that private money to create projects. And I think that this is actually an opportunity for other countries to say, how do we get a piece of the Indian pie? I mean, at the cost of sounding a little bit arrogant, I'm not trying to sound arrogant. I'm saying that this is a great opportunity for that kind of collaboration as well, and for many more countries to now forge co-production treaties with India. We have too few. We should have all of the East. So that's the Singapore, Malaysia, all of that triangle. Strongly Tamil-speaking countries, big Tamil populations. We should have treaties with those countries because. Sorry.
Aditi, sorry to interrupt you. No, but I think more than the treaties, I feel the treaties are there for 15 countries. How many films have we made with these countries? I think the treaties are there. So there is an intention to work with another country. But when it trickles down, that comes to, I don't know what. I mean, there are no results. There are 3 panelists. There should be 15, 20 working in co-productions because India is so vibrant. We're making 2,000 films. I don't know how many series. The volume of content is just mind-altering that we are making. And easily there is scope of doing it, scaling it up. If the government comes in, and partners, I think it's very easy to do that.
Gaurav, may I? Can you just elaborate a bit more on? I'm hearing that the government needs to do more. But what is it that you expect from the government?
Sure.
Because you see, ultimately, filmmaking is, like Aditi said, it's in the private domain. A lot of players are in the private domain. On the one hand, we are saying that there should be less of government. On the other hand, you're saying government needs to do more. So what exactly is the expectation that the government will do? Insofar as what Rohena said about, the streamlining the process, yes, I have taken note of it. And I'm sure in my Film Facilitation Office website, I will have the step-by-step procedure plus the checklist for co-production so that, people are aware that these are the things that needs to be done. The script vetting is a bit of, is somewhere something which I think both countries go through it in an official co-production. But I would like to know specifically A, B, C, D, E. These are the 5 points on which we want clarity from the government. If I can have that, then I start working on it. Rather than a general statement that, look, government needs to be aware. Yes, government is aware that a lot of things is happening in the private space. A lot of things are happening in where it has to happen. Probably that's the way it needs to be done. We don't need the government in this thing. But from the policy angle, what is it that you want? What is it that is implementable? And what can be done in the long run, in the short run, in the medium run? You could just elaborate a bit more on that.
There's your homework, Gaurav. Aditi, also, I think you wanted to come in?
Yep.
Yeah, let us speak and then I can come in.
Well,
apologies for, kind of talking out of turn, but I thought I needed to learn more.
Sure, ma'am. We are happy to. I'm happy to write a whole long thing about what we should do, sure. And I probably will send it to you.
Sure.
I think that there's obviously larger issues, but and maybe Gaurav will write those down. That email. But I think, ma'am, it basically comes down to the fact that, at this point, there are many producers in India that have learned the discipline of co-production and probably can convert many more projects that come to India if there were those incentives available in India. At the moment, it's very hard to bring. It is very, very hard to bring foreign co-producers into India where they're willing to share intellectual property with us while still not being able to raise any soft funding out of India. The attachment of equity funding, of course, is a huge advantage in India, but it's also a disadvantage when working on a certain kind of project. I think that we could increase the volume of work for all of us if those incentives existed. And I know I'm making an obvious point, but the other thing that I was saying earlier is that, and Gaurav, I know that there are many treaties that are underutilized, but I think that there are specific countries where we should have treaties, and Singapore is one of those countries. There have already been a lot of films where there's been investment from Singapore, and Singapore has a huge Indian population. They have a massive Tamil population. We have a massive Tamil film industry in India. That market is really giving us an opportunity to go into Malaysia, that entire FMS triangle. And I think that Singapore could be the conduit for that. So just in a very specific, to do, I think a co-production treaty with Singapore is important.
On a lighter vein, I speak Tamil at home.
Oh, ma'am.
For even more reason. No, ma'am, but see, producers face particular problem in, certain things, apart from the paperwork and the usual stuff, is that they need development. The biggest investment for a producer is how does he develop this project that he has to now build. It's like if you're making a building, you need to sort of have an architect construct the building, have the land where you need to make it, etc., just like a building. So if you have, money to develop that, I think from just that development fund, which is what if the government can provide, I think that also could really accelerate the quantity of stuff that is being developed, because you have to, the first money is being invested by, for example, my project would be me. I would be investing, or I have to get someone, which is at that stage is very tough. It's extremely, extremely tough because it's just an idea at that point. And if you give a certain chunk in certain parameters, that can make a lot of people create much faster. For example, one, and I'm happy to share all the other, because I've been doing, I did a lot of American, Australian, British co-productions on television, not co-productions, but sometimes they were structured as co-productions. Sometimes we've line produced them. Shows like The Amazing Race, Ice Road Truckers, big shows, which we've been doing for about 15 years. I feel that if you incentivize areas in, say, for example, Uttarakhand, you could do a very good wild, I'm forgetting the name, Mr. Modi also did with him. You could create so much, with whatever we have available. It just needs to be sort of highlighted and put to your notice, maybe, of the things that we need to really address. And I think this forum is a good choice. I can send you privately a list of things that can be done on all sectors, according to me.
And Sergio, I see you'd like to make a point here, and Rohena, I see also. Sergio.
Yes. So to answer to the very positive question of Ms. Kalyani from the point of view of a foreign co-producer, I mean, I was very interested in the observation of Aditi and of Gaurav, because they see the things from the point of view of the Indian part of a co-production. I am the foreign part of a co-production. I have given you before a picture which is very positive. I am very happy and very enthusiastic of how we are progressing. Nevertheless, the lockdown, which we hope to overcome. But I must be very honest in saying that on this project, we are working since a few years. And I have suffered a lot when NFDC has suspended to have opened the office of the co-production. So those 3 years, we had already started some very, very positive discussion to have NFDC as co-producer. And then for 3 years, there has been no co-production from NFDC. And so I am extremely glad that it has started again, the office of the co-production, and that we could make, an honest application, which we will get the result in real time as soon as also the closure and, this pandemia will permit us to start working concretely again. But if I have to give an answer to Ms. Kalyani, is you have already the instrument, from my point of view as a foreign producer, in the sense that also for my ministry to know that an institutional ministerial institution like NFDC, so old and so qualified, which is such a great name in the international market. I mean, I am collaborating with NFDC at my level from 1984, when I was in Venice for par with Gautam Ghosh. So you can imagine, it's a long story of qualifying the Indian cinema abroad by NFDC, and what means for my ministry to know that a partner of our film can be, such qualified Indian institution. So my answer is, you have the instrument. Let it work, and let it be as possible, open to this collaboration. And also FFO is very useful because this will be more concerning.
Yes. I don't know if Ms. Kalyani wants to come back on that point, but I do want to get Rohena in
Yes.
a moment.
Sure.
Actually, I wanted to bring up something that's related to what Gaurav was saying, but for a slightly different reason. Ma'am, you said that the private sector, the private sector can handle things, and why should the government really be involved? And what I wanted to express is actually when you operate purely with the private sector and you operate purely with a sort of commercial logic of things, you limit what gets made and how it gets made, right? So our logic of filmmaking, our logic, the choices that are made, the way that things are done are purely based on, and I because also my primary job is not as a producer, so I come to it slightly differently from the other people on the panel, as to the fact that it's wonderful if we support the making of and also support films in general that do not fit this logic, films that have like Sergio has, he has wonderful films on his that he's involved with, or films that Gaurav has made. These are films that if they have the full support of the government and other filmmakers and other films, I feel we could have a much wider range of things, especially if it's deemed as culturally important. There are films that should get made and need to be made, which the commercial logic doesn't support.
Well, sorry, Ms. Kalyani.
Yeah, just to answer both Sergio, yes, we are picking up. Co-production is starting. We will take it up as soon as we've had some internal issues which we are trying to resolve, which should be, hopefully it should be done. Rohena, coming to your question about, commercially, why aren't the films doing? NFDC has a repertoire of more than 300 films. We produce more than 300 films. Hardly 50% of them are commercially successful. So for a production company, if it has to be successful in plowing back the money inside as a commercial venture, it becomes a bit of this thing. But then at the same time, it is with the support of the government that NFDC has been able to bring out a lot of independent, producers and directors, etc. So we have to balance what is commercially viable and what is really required in the interest of cinema. And that is the role which NFDC is trying to do. And I hope it continues to do that. But yes, commercially viable, I can't dictate what the audience wants, right? So, but what we are trying to do within the country is increase the theater density. So maybe that way, if you have, rather than multiplexes, if you have single screens, then the cost of distribution would come down. I don't know. Gaurav and Aditi may be in a better position to tell me what would be the real situation if we were to increase the theater density to the smaller cities and towns in the country. So maybe that is one way of, kind of approaching the issue, and where the government can perhaps come in and, talk to the states to bring in the theater density and bring down the distribution costs also that way. So.
Ms. Kalyani, Mark, I'll come back to you in a moment, but if I can just say from my own experience that if you are only making a profit on 50% of your films, that's an astonishing average that any studio would be envious of. So I congratulate you.
I said I'm hopeful at least 50% of my films.
I want to come back to you. May I just check in with you, Ms. Sekhar? You've sat patiently listening. I don't know if there are points you want to make as the clock is running down, whether you wanted to come in before I come back to Marc Lorber.
Actually, I was going to jump into the battle with the government and challenge Neerja.
Oh, there you go. In which case, the floor is yours, Mr. Lorber.
Well, I figured we could have a little conversation about television. I'll tell you the way I think you can help Indian producers from the government for television and help me. I hear from some very proactive Indian producers and production companies, a very few who travel to the key television conferences, not just MIPCOM and MIP, not just the equivalent of the Cannes Film Festival, but other things, and are here sometimes in the UK, in Canada, in the US. So I think to the degree I can encourage you to work with PACT, which is the British Independent Production Company Producers Guild, shall we say, or BAFTA, the British Film and Television Academy, who often have trade missions, who often are bringing producers, writers, directors from other countries to introduce us to them and vice versa. And helping to put these co-production treaties into action. That would be beneficial. I think, I don't meet enough Indian producers and production companies to direct them to the kinds of projects that I could take on. And they probably don't have a good sense of what I and my company and other companies like us are looking for outside of India. And that's really where it begins, is finding those organic projects, those relationships that, as Sergio said and Paul said, start years ago. And sometimes it takes a few years before we find that project we can connect on and then build. But it's, for me in television, it's those relationships that need to be built more as India looks outward to the rest of the world and its television travels, whether it's in English or it's subtitled or dubbed. And that's my challenge to you on the TV side of the government.
Can I step in here, Colin, a little bit here? Yes, so I'm glad you're talking about television, and I would like to share that Prasar Bharati, which is our public broadcaster, they have MOUs with 29 countries, and they have been working on co-productions with a number of countries. I mean, a lot of projects have already taken place in the last few years. So I would invite all of you, whoever is willing to come to the television sector, because if we look at the media and entertainment sector, in terms of market share, television is at number 1. And then print, now digital media has now taken over. And then the films. So we have been somehow focusing a lot on films, welcome. But television is again another sector with 198 million households in India having television. So this is a massive sector. And we would welcome all those who would like to join the sector and in partnership with our public broadcaster and use our treaties that we have.
And to add to her, the television, the incentives that we will be announcing sooner than later, I hope, once the shooting starts in earnest, will include television series, web series. Incentives will be available for filming in India, as well as co-production for television series and web series too.
Well, like any good producer, I like to finish on a high note with a sort of tease to the future. And Miss Kalyani has given us the perfect opportunity to do that. But it's interesting what Marc was saying, and the challenge to all of us really in this is film and television, and particularly co-production, survive on conversations. And events like MIPCOM, events like the Cannes Film Festival, and indeed events like Vicky Frames and my Vicky colleagues, it looks to me like Mr. Lorber needs an invitation to next year's event. These are the places at which we form these bonds. Zoom conversations like this are excellent, and I think we've certainly, unfortunately, filled the inbox of the joint secretaries again. So Gaurav and Aditi, I leave you to follow up on that. But my thanks to you all for your time. My apologies. I know on my Q&A box is full of questions, and as so often the case, people looking for money for their productions. We'll deal with those separately. But to my distinguished panel, thank you very much indeed for your time today. I wish you all well in your next co-productions, and I very much look forward to seeing you all in the flesh soon. Good luck and stay safe.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Thank you.